It's horror month, the time for fright and dread. Whether I'm failing once more to commit to watching horror movies every day or catching up on my backlog of survival horror games, it's all about the wonder of terror. While this channel is dedicated to video games as art, or just video games because I fucking love them, I've always liked to think of it as an appreciation of art in any medium. Here's a bit of channel lore. I was originally going to make this a film channel. I fucking love cinema. Annoying friends with my takes, looking too deep into a scene's cinematography, and of course, logging on to Letterboxd are some of my favorite pastimes. I've even got some old script lying around somewhere about the sound design of No Country for Old Men. So, just for a bit of fun, I thought it'd be neat to briefly talk about Nobuhiko Obayashi's 1977 masterpiece, House. It was hard to pick a movie for this video. Cure was a contender, but I already briefly recommended it at the end of last year's Halloween video, so I didn't want to bring it up again. Tetsuo the Iron Man is absurdly gross and violent. I love that movie so much, but that's definitely a movie I want and need more time to talk about. I first saw it in a theater, and it was one of the best experiences of my life to hear other moviegoers react so vehemently. John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness is an underrated Carpenter flick, and I think you get the point. There are a lot of horror movies, or movies in general, that I'd love to share my thoughts on, all of which I think everybody should watch, so just go watch the ones I just mentioned. House is unique to all of those, not just in its silliness, but because I've seen it 3 times before rewatching it again this year. It's become tradition at this point. Anyways, not that I really have to point it out anymore, but House is an all-time favorite movie of mine. House is an insanely insane movie. Before going into its cinematography, visual effects, editing, set design, or even writing, the first wild thing about House is that it's Obayashi's first feature-length film. Obayashi started making experimental films when he began making movies. He didn't want to become a doctor like his father wanted to, so he just pursued film and, well, he went crazy with it. They're pretty cool and out there. It's what you expect from one of the founding members of an experimental film collective. What started Obayashi's career, though, was directing commercials. You might even have encountered one of the commercials that he directed in the wild. Like, the Mandem ad featuring Charles Bronson is iconic. Just look at this fucking editing, man.
There's a someone, soon the world will be yours. The music starts flowing, Michael turns.
Even in a corporate landscape, Obayashi maintained his playful and experimental qualities. Nobody would really do this today for a commercial, and I can't imagine what it felt like to see it being aired back then. So when some suits came to Obayashi asking if he wanted to make something in the vein of Jaws to cash in on its monolithic success, you know Obayashi was going to go wild. It's so funny that Obayashi, who was at the time an amateur filmmaker, was asked to make a Jaws wannabe, and he instead gave them a silly horror house movie. House is critically acclaimed today, being cemented as a cult classic in spite of being panned by Japanese critics at the time. Regardless, it's still sold really well, and overseas audiences love the psychedelic movie. If there's one thing nobody could shit on House for, is how it looks. The colors are beautifully bright, the blocking and set design are wonderful, and the editing is fucking insane if it wasn't obvious enough from my glazing. There isn't a single scene that'll bore your eyes. Just look at how the set for a simple apartment living room is dressed. Or even better, look at how picturesque and wacky a normal-ass train ride is shown to the viewers. There's an old idiom, every frame a painting, which is a bit corny at this point, but it perfectly suits House. Every shot is considered, every scene is meticulously planned, and every bit of action is thoughtfully choreographed. It's a photographic masterwork that Obayashi and company beautifully realized, which was amplified when they made the editing take almost as much presence as the cinematography. Look at how the movie starts. It goes from a cartoony animated title card to ancient monochromatic shots, and then overlays said shots onto a freeze frame of a future section of the scene until it syncs up and boom, it's a conventional looking movie now. The editing is absurdly creative. It's honestly my favorite aspect of the movie and of Obayashi's works. Editing is an art form. I think it's far from brave of me to say that, and it's unsurprising considering one of my jobs. But generally, it can be seen as just a necessity for progressing and structuring movies. Yet we also understand the power it has to create meaning and express emotions. The unorthodox nature of Obayashi's filmmaking style is why I love the hyper dreamlike quality of the editing. I mean, who would edit a montage of friends hanging out like this besides Obayashi? It reminds me very much of that one scene in Shinya Tsukamoto's Tetsuo the Iron Man, where a bunch of still frames are strung together to depict blinding speeds. Actually, House did this too to mimic cartoon slapstick comedy for one bit. Similar to Tetsuo, House is silly beyond its premise by integrating playfulness straight from the cutting room floor. Cutting and masking are done to emphasize the wonder of youth and the energy that comes with it, tying the film's structure and vibrancy to its theme of the old resenting the young. Stepping back again into history for a bit, one of the more interesting things about House is that Obayashi's daughter, Chigumi, practically co-wrote it with him. Some of the film's most striking and memorable moments came from her. In an interview, Obayashi explained that he sought input from his at the time 10-year-old daughter because he believed anything he could think of would be boring. To him, the inexplicable scenarios of a child's imagination were more valuable than any adult's fears since adults think rationally. The illogical horrors of a child's mind outweighed whatever Obayashi could think of to become the Japanese equivalent of Jaws. Yet, despite the man-eating piano and evil watermelon head well, the movie is coherent and maintains logic in its ridiculousness because it's the doings of an envious witch. Well, the witch can't really excuse the Disney-like happiness of this scene, but the movie's already whimsical as hell, so it fits right in. But the story. What's House all about? The main protagonist, Gorgeous, and her friends are all naively young, enjoying life blindly and without pain. Yet, Gorgeous is jealous of her father giving attention to her stepmother, and is so upset she refuses to go on vacation with him. So, after remembering about her estranged aunt, Gorgeous doesn't think twice and brings her friends along for a visit. Slowly, her aunt's house begins to attack the girls, and they eventually have to fight for their life. The cast is goofy and earnest as hell. Gorgeous and her friends have great banter and exert such an enjoyable bliss of ignorance that you'll be having fun with them, unless you hate kids. Despite being archetypes of horror movie characters, they still feel human because of that young naivety. Though, the aunt is arguably the best character of the movie. She's just so evil that she's having fun with her cruelty, so you'll be smiling along with her as she commits acts of spite. Now is the time to get into spoiler territory, so skip right here if you want. But if you're still on the fence, I just want to add that if you love Evil Dead 2, then you'll fucking love this movie. The main theme of House is that jealousy is violent. It poisons the soul and hurts everybody around you. Gorgeous is an envious person, obviously showing that when her father brought a new person into their lives. But jealousy isn't her core emotion in this situation. She's more so feeling frustrated since she's still not over the death of her mother, which is why she was incredibly willing to go over to her aunt's house, whom she barely knows. It's the aunt who is the main catalyst for House's theme of jealousy. Her aunt lived through World War II and came out of it scarred. She had a loving partner, one who she thought she would spend her whole life with, but he sadly died as a pilot. While that was happening, her sister, Gorgeous's mother, was able to live her life and eventually got married. The aunt hated her sister for that and never let it go for the rest of her life. Inviting Gorgeous over is, in a way, how she was going to get revenge on her sister. But even more than that, by being an old person who lived through the Second World War, by enacting her spite on a group of young kids, it subconsciously transforms the conflict into a jaded older generation taking out their anger on a post-war youth who luckily didn't have to endure the same hardships. She kills younger women to steal their lives to maintain a biomechanical weapon of anger and greed called her mind. The girls' resistance is, in the end, futile, but they go down loudly and proudly through the power of pure joy and whimsy. In order to face the evil of resentment, House says to simply enjoy life and live as happily as possible. Although the girls didn't survive and the witch won, Obayashi isn't a cynic. What House intended to do was demonstrate the vile terror and cruelty that spawns from holding grudges and being bitter. At the beginning of the film, Gorgeous and her friend, Fantasy, are happy for one of their teachers who's getting married. Gorgeous teases the teacher, saying she's probably getting married for love, but the teacher shows a restrained sorrow in her face, telling them it's actually an arranged marriage. The teacher is clearly upset when her marriage is brought up, but when the girls leave, rather than being annoyed or angry at their freedom, the teacher happily sighs and reminisces on her childhood summers. This one simple scene is how I've always seen the movie, as a condemnation of envy, with the teacher being a counterpart to the aunt despite playing a small role in the plot. Another character that acts as a counterpart to the witch is Gorgeous's stepmother, Ryoko. She's just incredibly happy to be in Gorgeous's life. She doesn't let the past hold her back. Ryoko is constantly looking forward to the future rather than being stuck in the past of herself and others. But when Ryoko goes to check up on Gorgeous, she's faced with the witch and, well, the witch fucking burns her alive. But she doesn't scream out in pain. Although the fury of spite can burn down lives, it's the acts of joy and love that can suppress envy's flames. I can't really say more to try to get anybody to watch House. I've hit the main points in its fever-dream visuals and zany plot, but I also just literally cannot spend more time writing this. Then again, I just don't want to spoil any more than I have. It's impossible to properly sell a movie to someone via video because, well, I have to show things from the movie when talking about it. I've spoiled more than I wanted to, is what I'm saying. Yet, despite that, I didn't give the experience of watching House. God, I wish I could fucking watch this movie for the first time again. Hopefully, if you haven't seen this movie, you're gonna watch it. Or if you have, you'll rewatch it. Better yet, I hope you didn't make it this far into the video and just pulled up the movie instead. It's a ridiculous film, but also powerfully engrossing and poignant. Although it's wonderfully absurd, it's genuinely moving at times in its sheer love for life. You could take my word for it, but you can only see it to believe it. Thanks for watching. Also, many thanks again for the tremendous support on the last video. My sub count literally more than tripled, which is really hard for me to grasp still, like a month after its release. Sorry for the short and lower quality video. Honestly, I spent less time on this than I wanted. I always try to do a yearly Halloween video, which are always more focused on fun than critical analysis, but this year's been pretty busy for me. Like, I gotta work on making 2 video games this semester. Come on, man, it already sucks I get barely enough time to log on to Hunt Showdown as is. You can call it a compromise, but I still think this was a fun video to make and maybe hopefully watch. I really just wanted to share and rave about a movie that I love instead of meticulously looking into it. A little treat, if you will. Don't worry though, the next video will be a big one. Hopefully. I mean, I've been cooking some scripts and ideas for videos in the meantime, but they always take a while because of life, and well, they're kind of, the script is always the worst part because it takes forever. Anyway, have a good Halloween. I'm gonna go put out Newports for trick-or-treaters. Bye.